All right, what's going on, everybody? You already know this is your boy Narcolepsy Boy 94K Malik back here again. My man Kyrin. So me and my man Kyrin, we came up with this idea that because we're big Disney fans, so we always do Disney podcasts. We talked about pretty much everything. We've done top tens. We've talked about every era of Disney. We done talked about favorite movies of ours, but we never really covered the era of Disney's movies. So today we're gonna start our series of a 4-part series we're doing. Today, we're going to cover the Golden Age era and the Wartime Age era, the first part of this series. We're talking about, the movies, the success that it had, the downfalls that it had, what it did for, as it started the promotion of Disney, Walt Disney's vision of what he wanted to do as far as growing the Disney iconic movies that he made. And then part 2, we will feature on Friday, which will feature the Silver Age era and the Bronze era. Then part 3 is going to be the Renaissance era, post-Renaissance era, and then part 4 will be the Revival era and future, which we're in right now. And we'll maybe talk about things that we want to see and what the future holds like. So go ahead and let you introduce yourself real quick before we go ahead and get into it.
It's your boy Kyrin Chase. I'm ready to get started. But another thing we need to bring up is that we're not going to necessarily review each movie from the eras. We're going to talk about each movie, but we won't do any in-depth analysis on the films because either we assume you've seen them or it's not just about the films or their quality. There's also about behind the scenes things, production, right, and everything and about that. So
yeah, we might we might cover the ones that are very important, the ones that like really impacted Disney. You know what I'm saying? The ones that did box office numbers and it changed the game for Disney. But if you haven't seen most of these movies, then you probably can't relate. You probably gotta go see them. I mean, we got Disney Plus now, so if you got Disney Plus, they got all the movies on there. So go check them out. But there are so many eras of Disney. So let's start with the Golden Age era. Take my phone. Golden Age era started from 1937 to 1942. We have Snow White, which was the first Disney movie ever. Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, and Bambi, which I've written down. Let's go ahead and dive into Snow White. So Snow White actually took 3 years to make, which a lot of people, I don't know if you know that. Actually, myself included, didn't know that until I did this research. They started the production in 1934, but it didn't come out until 1937. Walt Disney originally wanted the budget to be around $2,500, I believe, but it ended up being $1.5 million. So that's why the production took so long. But let's hop into first one with Snow White. What do you think about Snow White? How did it? This was very successful for Disney with being the first one. They took a big risk because, for what I've seen, a lot of people weren't really too sure how it was going to turn out.
Yeah, I saw a whole documentary on the making of this film like a year or two ago, and yeah, not only was the budget almost $1.5 million, Walt had to mortgage his house to help fund the film. His brother and his wife tried to talk him out of making it. And at one point, they ran out of money during production and had to convince the bank on an unfinished product, showing them things of what it can be. And it was a 50-50 gamble right then and there because the bank said no, the film wouldn't have been completed. Of course, everyone knows it was a huge risk. Walt put his future of the studio and his livelihood on the line to make this film. So similar to how Vince McMahon did with WrestleMania 1, because if it failed, the company would have probably went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And box office wise, it made $418 million at the box office, which is pretty huge, especially by today's standards. That probably in the billions, but I didn't estimate for because it's different doing money back then how it is now. Right. But it was a gamble that paid off for Walt and the company.
Right. So first off, 3 years, that's a lot of timing, to work on a movie that you don't even know what's going to turn out to be, because Disney had never, besides Mickey Mouse, you know what I'm saying, they never really done anything movie-wise with anything other differently. So 3 years is a big risk, but obviously it paid off very well. It definitely changed the landscape and started the path of the future for Disney. We got the box office thing for Pinocchio. What was Pinocchio? How successful was that?
The budget for Pinocchio was $200,289,247. Box office $164 million, which is good, but it wasn't the hit that Snow White was.
Right. So what do you think? Why do you think it didn't do as well as Snow White did?
Well, the main reason it didn't was the same reason a lot of these films didn't, because World War II cut off the European and Asian markets, which hurt any international success for any of the films after Snow White. which and because this around the time it took place, that's the biggest reason. Also, the film, even though people like it, was not highly praised like Snow White was, so people didn't love it as much.
Right.
And one thing is, Walt himself was very depressed over the initial box office returns of the movie.
Fantasia, what was the box office for that one?
Budget. Now, Fantasia is tough because the budget was only 2.28 million, and box office was between 76.4 and 83.3 million. But the thing is, the film didn't make a profit until 1969, which is 3 years after Walt passed away. Once again, due to World War II, and also because they used this thing called Sound with to help get the sound out faster. But it hurt the film profit due to how long it took to set up, and it was an even greater loss than Pinocchio.
Yeah, I think they had higher ranks for this one just because Mickey Mouse was in it. Mickey Mouse was their big creation from the beginning, since the 1920s. So I think they had high hopes for this one. It didn't do as well as Pinocchio did at all. Now Dumbo and Snow White are the two most successful ones from this era. Those are the ones that did the most at this time. Did the most well. So what was Dumbo's?
See, Dumbo is actually interesting because the budget was only $950,000 and it only made 1.3 million. And well, here's the thing: it was originally intended to be a short film, but it was turned into a feature film though it was a low budget, so they could bring in some ad revenue, and it also helped recoup the loss from Fantasia. And here's a big thing: there was a strike during production of this film by the workers, and the strikers demanded that the studio be unionized, and they were characterized as clowns in the movie. RKO, and this is the biggest thing: RKO didn't like the fact the movie was only 64 minutes, which is only an hour and 4 minutes. So they told Disney to either make it longer, edit it down to a short, or release as a B movie, and Disney refused all three. And it was released as an A movie. And it was Disney's most financially successful film of the 40s.
And then last but not least, we got Bambi, which, to me, I was surprised this one didn't do good at the time. You know what I mean? Because Bambi was, as far as now, it's pretty iconic because of the scenes, with Bambi's death and mom's death and all that stuff. So it's a pretty iconic movie now. But looking back in the 1930s and 40s, it didn't do too hot.
Yeah, the budget was $858,000, but that was the budget, and the box office 267.4 million. Here's the thing about Bambi: it was originally supposed to be a second film, but the animators were having a hard time animating deer realistically, and so they visited the LA Zoo for research, and then a small zoo in a studio. And they even named two farms after Bambi and Faline, which they would study deer movement. And due to the financial failure of both Pinocchio and Fantasia, Disney was forced to cut 12 minutes from the movie to save on production costs. And the thing is, the reason it wasn't, some people didn't like it back then. One, hunters, they didn't like how hunters were portrayed in the film. And even Walt Disney's daughter didn't like the fact that, Bambi, she told him Bambi's mother didn't have to die and that he could have changed it from the original book.
Right. See, this obviously is the first most emotional moment from a movie like this, you know what I'm saying? Because, oh my God, Bambi's mom got killed, you know what I'm saying? And even though you didn't see her get shot by the hunter, you know what I'm saying? You just knew what happened afterwards. But let's before we hop into anything else, what I'm sure you've seen all these movies like I have, you know what I mean? Besides the war and everything like that, let's try to take ourselves back in time to this, because we've seen all these movies. And then, I don't hate any of these movies on here. I'm saying, I wouldn't say any of these are my favorites personally, but they're not bad. But taking yourself back in time, do you think you would have enjoyed these movies in that time period, or you think they would have kind of been iffy?
I think I probably would have enjoyed them, though. It's hard to tell because we weren't around back then, and
Right.
Animated, cell animated movies that is weren't a thing like they are now. So obviously Snow White being something interesting because it was new, also helped big time with it. And one thing I still love about these films is that the animation still holds up pretty well. Even nearly 100 years later, the coloring in Snow White still looks nice. And I got to give Disney credit for that because this is where I think hand-drawn animation really does succeed over CGI animation, because hand-drawn animation can never really look dated, where CGI animation can look dated, and look like a product of their times. No offense to the original Toy Story, but that's the biggest problem I have with the film, is that the film looks dated by today's standards, whereas, hand-drawn films still look nice.
Yeah, so the color animation is one thing I want to discuss too, because back in the 1930s and 40s, color wasn't really as popular as it was back then. It wasn't really big. You know what I mean? They still were doing the black and white stuff with TVs. If you look at the movie The Wizard of Oz, you know what I'm saying? When they went to the black and white to the color, you know what I'm saying? That was a big huge deal back in the day. Back in the 30s, because go ahead.
Yeah, and I was gonna say one thing about that. You brought the Wizard of Oz, and even then, with the coloring, every time they shot something that was in color in that movie, it had to be indoors. So everything you see in that film from Oz is shot indoors. Even the outdoor scenes are indoor because the cameras just weren't, ready for, couldn't show outdoor color at the time.
So yeah, color animation is pretty good. I agree. I think the Snow White animation, as far as the drawings and how the characters look, aren't bad. I'm saying it looks pretty good for a 1930s movie. The same, with Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi. Those taking your time back into the 1930s and 40s. I'm saying those animations weren't terrible. You know what I mean? Like they look real. I'm saying they speak proper. The voice matches with the characters. It doesn't look terrible at all. But this era wasn't very successful money wise. It didn't do too good. Besides, really two movies. It only grossed 1.6 million total through all the movies. So not really what I'm sure Walt wanted, but he still had the future in mind that this was going to work out.
Yeah, and one thing about the animation Snow White, why it holds up pretty well, is in a technique I learned in class called rotoscoping. It's basically an animation technique that animators use to trace over motion footage frame by frame to produce realistic action. That's
Right.
why the humans in Snow White actually move more realistically because of rotoscoping. It's something I learned in class and something I looked up. I did research on.
Another thing too is that Snow White is the first original Disney princess, which will lead into other iconic Disney princesses too. So that's very important as far as the era goes too, because that set the tone for a lot of Disney princesses, because she started off in the movie as pretty much a slave. She was a house worker. You know what I'm saying? She was at the bottom under the queen, saying, so she really wasn't a princess at first until she moved to the forest, met the dwarfs, and then everything started to fall in place from there. So great storytelling, man. I've watched this movie many times, but I watched and studied the movie as I got older, and it's a great storytelling. You know what I mean? You have a beautiful, obviously the beautiful, iconic, beautiful young lady who just working just to survive in the world, and you have this evil queen who really has all the power. I'm saying she has no reason to be jealous of anybody, but she's jealous of Snow White because she's the fairest of the land. You know what I mean? And she believes that she's so much superior and so much iconic than her. So then she goes out of proportion to try to basically kill this girl, so she can wipe her out, so she can be the fairest of the land. So it told a good story. I enjoyed it. What would you say your favorite movie from this era would have been?
For me, it's between Bambi and Fantasia. I love the animation in both, but I love classical music, which is why I lean toward Fantasia. With Bambi, it's the most timeless of all the films because it's about animals, so it can take place at any time.
Yeah, I would say mine would probably be Snow White, to be honest. I mean, I've watched them all many times. I see Bambi would be close. Would be up there with close second. I really like Bambi a lot, actually. I think it's a great storytelling too. It's really good. But something about Snow White, I like. I'm big on YouTube with musicals, but I like the music in Snow White. I think I really love about this movie is all the characters from the Doors, how they all had different personalities, how they all stood out as different personalities. That was really cool to me. So I really, really, really like Snow White. But all these movies, all these movies weren't bad, but didn't do too well for the golden era. It wasn't as successful as it was meant out to be. So anything you want to touch on from the golden era before we move on to wartime?
Just a few more light facts about each film, some of the films.
Go ahead.
Well, with Fantasia, it was originally just going to be The Sorcerer's Apprentice, but Walt's brother Roy said it never recovered the cost from just one short,
Right.
And so that actually was a big reason why they just added a bunch of more shorts to it. Now, it wasn't like a package film like the Wartime era, but it was like they had added more just to make back the money. Like I said earlier, they didn't see a profit until 1969. So, and Walt never saw a profit off this film. I think I covered everything with Dumbo. Yeah. And same thing for Bambi too. There's not much in terms of Pinocchio I can really talk about about the production really, except Walt changing his design and personality because the book is completely different from the movie.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard. I've never read the book, but I've heard it's completely different from what the movie looks like. So, I mean, that's pretty much with any any book, any movie. The book's never really like the movie is. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes the book's better than the movie, sometimes the movie's better than the book. I think it really depends on what you read for. Like if you read the book first, like I don't know if you've ever seen The Outsiders, but I read the book. We read the book The Outsiders in school, and then we watched the movie afterwards, and the book was so much better than the movie. Like the book was, to me, the book was way better than the movie. I was like, the movie's,
I mean, I read and saw the movie, both movies at the same time. I don't know. I mean, since I was reading and seeing both at the same and seeing the movie at the same time. I don't know. I like both at different points. But the movie had its moments too.
sometimes, I mean, I guess sometimes when you read the book, sometimes the movies don't have all the scenes or all the points that the book had. You know what I mean? So I guess you expect, like the book and the movie to be exactly the same, and it's not always like that. So, um, yeah, Golden Era was pretty good to me, but I mean, it didn't do very successful. So I mean, we weren't alive back in the 30s and 40s. So going back in those days, I can see why some of these movies didn't do very successful because it's still very new too. Animation was still kind of new then, so people kind of really didn't know what this was or what it was going to lead to. But let's go take us into the wartime era, which was from 1943 to 1949. This was not only a rough time for the world, but a rough time for movies and everything going on. We had Salados Amigos, Three Caballeros. I think that's how you pronounce it. Was that correct?
Caballeros.
Caballeros. I was close, man. Make Mine Music, Melody Time, Fun, Fancy, and Free, and The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Let's start with Salados Amigos. What was the what you got written down for the box office and budget?
Well, it was hard to find a budget for the film. I do have the box office. The box office is $1,135 in worldwide rentals. So this isn't like theater wise. It's just rentals. So it made over $1 million, and at 42 minutes, the shortest Disney movie.
So obviously, we'll start with this one first. They did this movie for a reason because the war was going on at a certain period of time, and the movie takes place in a different country. So, what are your thoughts on the movie and what the success was? I mean, understanding why they did what they did at that time.
I mean, you can't really fault them too much because you understanding that people weren't, you couldn't make, any profit outside of North America because right. World War II was happening. And another thing is, and I had this for Three Caballeros, but it applies to both the first two. Walt Disney was commissioned by the U.S. Department of State to take a goodwill tour of South America, which is why the first two films are really heavily based off South America. And Walt made those two movies a dedication to the people they met and everyone down there. So that's a big thing about Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros. Like I said, I appreciate them for trying to do their best because let's be honest, if this era started in 1943, we wouldn't get to the Silver era until 1950. So for 7 years, they were struggling. So I gotta appreciate them for trying, but I don't know. The quality of these films aren't the best.
Yeah. What about Three Caballeros? What you got written down for that one?
Once again, I couldn't really find a budget. It's because the best I could do was that federal loan guarantees for most of these films help make them. Box office wise, once again, almost every film in this era is worldwide rentals when it comes to box office, and this one made $3,355,000.
Well, just go ahead and run through all the movies, like the budget stuff, and then we'll get into everything else.
Make My Music actually did find a budget, $1.35 million. Okay. And the box office $3,275,000 in worldwide rentals. Fun and Fancy Free only found box office, which was $3,165,000. Melody Time, the budget was $1.5 million, okay. And box office was $2,560,000. So they barely broke even there. And The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, the box office was $1,625,000.
Okay. So let's talk about the war and everybody going on strike. So obviously in the 1930s, 40s, we had World War II going on with Germany and Italy and everything going on with the world at that time. Now this was really a bad time, not only for the world but for Walt and Disney, because a lot of his staff went on strike at this time, which they ended up getting fired and everything like that. But what's your opinion on that? I mean, do you agree with taking a strike at this time, or you think they could have worked things out differently because we weren't around back then, so we don't really know the circumstances. But going on strike, that could have really downfalled a lot of things for Disney. That could have really affected everything. I mean, it could have all shut down and crashed right there.
And that's a big reason why like Dumbo was so short because of the strike. And because this strike did not start with the wartime, it actually started technically during the golden era age.
Right.
Once again, I don't know everything, but I heard working conditions weren't the best, and they wanted to unionize. And taking into account that lots of men were, having to fight in the war, and women were only could stay home. So people weren't able to make money, and they weren't making enough as it was already. And then the war just made it worse.
Yeah, things didn't turn out too well. I mean, hearing the stories about how just people going on strike, and he's trying to do his best to make these movies. I mean, he made enough movies for the 1940s, at that time period. But I can't blame and say that this was a bad era. I mean, obviously none of these movies were very successful, so I can understand why these weren't successful because domestically wise, they made good enough money through domestically wise, but international wise, they sucked because you couldn't get movies outside of the U.S.
But here's the thing, yeah, they were technically making movies domestically. When I gave you the box office, remember that was worldwide rentals. If I just stuck to the box office in America and Canada, which is the only place they were able to really make any money, and maybe South America, most of these films probably wouldn't have broken even.
Yeah, none of them. I mean, these obvious wartime era definitely didn't do as successful as the golden age era. I mean, the golden age era had more success as far as movie wise and budget and all that stuff. But I mean, I respect them because they did what they could. They worked what they had to work with at that time period. Government founding. So, what you want to reach into that government founding? What do you know about that?
I just know that like I said, I couldn't find a budget for most of these films, so they had to get money from the government, which in turn is why Walt had to take that goodwill tour South America because the government was helping him with the films, so he had to go to South America. I mean, they really didn't have a choice, but they need the government because they wouldn't have gotten these movies out.
Yeah, the tour, that I mean, that's the main reason that the first two movies were even made because the tour based off it was both the movies were in South America, so they probably had an agreement like we'll help you out, but you got to go ahead and tour South America because things are going sour on the world right now. So we need positive vibes, and we need to let other countries know that the United States isn't a threat to them. You know what I mean? Because back in these days, back in these days, countries would unite to fight together against other countries. So they don't want any other enemies that they already have to begin with. So you gotta make allies out there. And I've seen all these movies. I don't know. You said you haven't seen any of them, right? You haven't seen.
I've seen small clips because here's the thing. Remember, these were just short films put in the movies. These weren't, these films didn't have really much of a set narrative. You can catch a lot of these films at Disneyland, at parks, So I've seen clips of these movies. I've never seen any of them fully, and I really don't have any plans on watching them.
Yeah, I've seen all of these. I actually used to have the VHS tapes of them as a kid back when you used to have them, but it's crazy because I don't, like I said, with the Golden Age, I don't really hate any of these movies either. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think any of these movies are terrible. They're not like I wouldn't put them up there on the high pedestal as my favorites. Like if I mention my favorite Disney movies, none of these will be in there. But I don't think these were bad. Animation wise, it wasn't as good as the Golden Age era. The animation wise sucked pretty bad. Because people went on strike and staff and everything, so everything just was falling apart. So some of these movies were better than others. And the Fun, Fancy, and Free that actually took a couple years to make too because that was supposed to I believe that was written in 1942 or 43 or something like that. It didn't come out until the late 1940s because of the war, because of how everything was getting put on hold. So a lot of these movies also got put on hold because of how the war was affecting everything. So.
And the company really could not afford that as it was because they're barely making money as it is. So if you hold off, with these films going on hold, that just makes it even worse. Like we're barely making a profit. Now we got to push these films back, and they can barely even pay to make the films, and they're not breaking even domestically.
Yeah. So between the Golden Age era and the wartime era, let's put these two eras together. How did it impact the world of Disney as so far as between now and then?
Well, the golden era obviously was the one that really kickstarted everything. So that alone is impact because we all have our favorite Disney films. And I always go back to Snow White. If that film had not succeeded, we wouldn't have Lion King, which is your favorite. We wouldn't have Mary Poppins, which is my favorite. So we owe a lot to that film success as it is. After that, the films never hit, none of the films after that were really successful. They made profits, but they weren't that successful. And this is where the Silver Age is going to come in later.
It's crazy how one movie can just change the whole outcome, the whole landscape. I mean, because they're pretty much even in the wartime era, I feel like they were pretty much still riding off Snow White's back, kind of pretty much. Because I mean, they didn't have a big hit like that yet until we get to the Silver Age era. But I mean, they still didn't have that big hit.
Yeah, I mean, they were piggybacking off of Snow White's success, and like they even took some of the money from that film that helped make the studio, like the studio that we've come to know. That money from Snow White went to that, and that led to Walt being able to make more animated films.
Yeah, they had to get a new studio and everything. I think there was another part of it too when he went on the tour that he had to give up the studio because he was trying to get a bigger studio, so he had to regross the studio, which he used which he obviously used his money for. But these eras, let's rate these eras on a scale of 1 to 10. What would you say?
I'll give the golden era a 7. It's iconic, and some of the films hold up well, but others don't. Right. But at the same time, you can't deny its importance. I'll give the wartime era a 4. I obviously you can't fault Disney so much because of what was happening in the world. But at the same time, the films if I judge the films by quality, the films aren't great.
Yeah,
and they weren't successful. Granted, it's not Disney's fault, but this is what happened.
I would give the golden era. I would say like 7.5, 8. I mean, maybe I'm being a little biased, but none of these movies I don't really hate any of these movies. I actually like a lot of these movies. Actually, Snow White's probably my favorite one. Bambi's up there. You know what I'm saying? Fantasia, it was great too. I actually have both Fantasia and Fantasia 2000 on both DVDs. Pinocchio wasn't bad. Dumbo was okay, but I mean, I would say 7.5 because of the importance that it had, the impact. And in the wartime era, I gotta go. I'm gonna give it a 3 for me. I mean, even though they struggled with the war and everything, there was just nothing they could do. It was out of their control. You know what I mean? Kind of like how the world is right now with the virus. It's out of everybody's control with the economy and everything. There's nothing they could really do, so you got to work what you got to work with. But just the animation wasn't great. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing like if you look at any of these movies, there's nothing iconic about any of these movies that stands out. Not music wise,
exactly.
Not animation wise.
And let's say, and here's another thing that people don't have to take into account. Let's say if something like, we're obviously going through a worldwide pandemic right now. Let's say another wolf of that film right now, and that film came out 7 years ago. Like you didn't have merchandising back then.
Same with Lion King too. I mean, that came out in the 1990s. You know what I'm saying? They still making money off that movie. You know, so
exactly.
Some of these movies, you can say Snow White too. I mean, Snow White, they're making money off that movie probably now than they ever did before because with how everything is now, they would think about how people dress up for Halloween. Snow White, you know what I'm saying? That's merchandise right there. T-shirts, the DVDs they come out with anniversary DVDs every couple of years. Like the 80th anniversary of Snow White coming out, and people are gonna buy the DVD. You know what I'm saying? So, they're making, obviously Disney will ever be fine now because they're worth billions of dollars now. I mean, this is the future that Walt Disney had of. I mean, it's sad to see that he never got to see his future come as a whole because I'm sure that guys like Vince, Walt Disney, these guys have visions of how they want to build their company and what they have, and of course when you start off with it, people are going to try to tell you what's good, what's not good, what's good, but they always stuck to what they knew what was going to help and how they knew they were going to build their company and how it was going to invest and grow. And look at them now. See, WWE's worth millions, Disney's worth billions probably. So.
And here's the thing. We might be at a low point right now when it comes to the timeline because we're at a wartime, but things for Disney are going to pick up with the Silver Era, which, even though it might not be the most successful, the Silver Era is probably the most iconic.
Yeah, so part 2, we're going to get into on video 2, which will come Friday. It will be the Silver Era and the Bronze Era. So I'm really excited to talk about the Silver Era. There are a lot of, pretty much every movie in there is a hit to me, if you ask me. I mean, all those movies in there I love. Bronze Era, that's another downfall, and struggled a lot too. But there's some iconic movies in there that still to this day. I mean, some of these. What's fascinating to me is that some of these movies really didn't hit off until later of the years, like when VSH tapes came out, or just it's funny how things like that can happen because I talked to my grandma because she was around in these times about this, and she's seen some of these movies in theaters. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember she went to go see Cinderella in theaters, 1950. She saw a lot of these movies in theaters, and none of these movies like were really successful around that time until afterwards, until later in the year. So I'm excited for part two. Part two to me, the Silver Age and Renaissance Age are the two ones that I'm gonna be most excited to talk about because those are the two most important ones for as far as Disney eras go, because of the importance and the iconic that it had around with the movies and everything. Anything you want to touch on between any of these eras, between the Silver Era or the not Silver Era, but the Golden Age era and the Wartime era? Anything else that you want to touch on that maybe the importance or things that you appreciated or?
I've touched on everything I need to talk about.
All right, so you can go ahead and we'll go ahead and stop there. Then we'll sign off. Make sure you guys tune in for part two. Part two will be a good one. Part two might be a little longer than this one too, because there's a lot of things we got to touch on in part two. That's the importance of. And then part three we'll have the Renaissance era and the second and post-Renaissance era, and then part four we'll have the Revival era and the current era that we're in right now. Yeah. Which they're saying it's called the New Era, but I don't think they really have a name for it yet. So
yeah, I've heard different things about the era we're in right now. We don't really have a name for it, but I can guarantee the Renaissance era is probably going to be the longest because those are the movies we're most familiar with.
Oh yeah, all those movies are pretty much box office. I mean, Renaissance era. I went through the whole thing. I read down like the Academy Awards they read for. Like Renaissance era was popping. The 1990s. They was made. That's when Disney really started making all that money, all that from success. So, excuse me. I'll let you go ahead and sign off real quick. Tell everybody where they can find you, and then we'll go ahead and end it.
Follow me on Twitter, _Kyrin. My Twitter is _Kyrin. My Tumblr, DeviantArt Kyrin Chase. My YouTube account, Kyrin Chase. I do videos on wrestling, so on the Hedgehog, My Little Pony Future with Magic. And I will be back Friday for part two of the series.
Make sure you guys stay in tune for part two. If you aren't familiar with these eras, because these are very, very old, I'm saying these were like 80-something years ago. If you aren't familiar with these eras, go to Disney Plus, go watch them. Leave your comments below about how you felt about them if you've already seen them. Some of these success. I mean, if you thought some of these were successful, let me know. I mean, some people have different opinions. So if you thought some of these eras were more successful than the others, if you enjoyed some of these movies that maybe we didn't enjoy, let us know. But I will say overall, between both eras, I will combine both eras and give it a solid 7 for both eras combined, as far as maybe success wise and the importance of it, because like you said, I mean, it really touches on what's like I said with Snow White, man, because without that movie, who knows, what could happen after that. Disney, I mean, you're talking about the first Disney movie ever. I'm saying it took 3 years of production just to make. So Walt taking a huge risk and a huge chance on it, and it paid off very well. So I will go ahead and give it a solid 7 between both eras. But as far as that, no, I think we pretty much touched on everything that we needed to. So make sure you guys stay tuned. We got another part for you coming too, and we might have an extra special bonus clip for Pixar later down the road too, as far as covering eras, because there's eras that's Disney and Pixar is pretty much the same thing now because the company got bought. So make sure you guys stay tuned, and we're out.
Peace.